and representing people in what we would hope would be some form of common law courts or private arbitration.
Well, for normal sort of police services, I think the way people would think of it nowadays, just with private agencies fulfilling those services, and notice the big difference here is there would be competition. So right now, if just imagine a grocery store, they hired an agency to crack down on shoplifting, some kid puts a stake under his under his coat pocket, and he starts running out the door, and the agency goes and tackles him and breaks his legs or shoots him cold dead. That would be bad for business. That particular agency would go out of business, and so over time you would see police, what we think of as the job of the police, would be handled by competing private firms in a very efficient but also humane manner.
You didn't have prisons, for example, in earlier societies, which were much less state-oriented than the ones today. I mean, prisons are a relatively recent development. Britain, I think, was the first to have them in the 18th century.
The idea of private defense services was first suggested by Gustave de Molinari in his 1849 essay, The Production of Security.
When we think about the private provision of military defense, it's important to always use an apples-to-apples comparison. So it's true that a relatively small city, no matter what they did, wouldn't be able to repel Nazi Germany, for example. But by the same token, neither did France. And France used a conventional state military to defend itself, and it lost. So the claim from the anarchist camp is always that for a given group of people, other things equal, they will be able to better defend themselves if their defense is left to voluntary market provision than if the government monopolizes and tries to take over that enterprise. So as far as a city of 25,000 people defending themselves, we don't know exactly what they would do, but the point is any money they spent on missile defense or other types of defense would be better spent, because we can see governments notoriously spend way too much on military procurement. The amount they spend for a given missile or bullets or whatnot is more than the private sector analog would be. So for a given amount of expenditure, a smaller society of truly free people would get more bang for their buck, as it were. Also, the issue is they wouldn't be an offensive threat to anybody. So there would be no reason for a state to want to invade them, except perhaps for the ideological one, that it's awkward that there's this free society that's prospering. But in terms of why is it that governments largely go to war with each other, just like Switzerland, for example, was able to go through both world wars relatively unscathed, and it's partly because everybody knows they're not a threat to us. The problem with the state provision of military defense, among other issues, is that it limits the brainstorming to just a few people who are in the military hierarchy and maybe some of the political figures involved as well. And whereas a genuine open market relies on the contributions and the insights of the whole community. And so when you have the state running your defense, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And that was shown, for example, most famously with France and the Maginot Line, during World War II, where that sort of system wouldn't have occurred like that under private provision. Whereas, one company thought, let's just really have these strong fortifications, but some other company might say that's not a good idea. Let's try, having these other systems to repel invaders. And so that's really the benefit of having competition when it comes to military defense, is that's the last place in the world you want to have one agency with one plan, and if the plan doesn't work, then your country gets taken over.
Entrepreneurial innovation has done more to diminish state power than most political action.
Number one, 3D printers, right? CNC millers, ghost gunners. These are great options for people who want to be able to defend themselves, but not have to register with the state or go onto a government list. That's one of my favorites. Also, cryptocurrency miners, right? Just if you're mining for Bitcoin, you're engaging in counter-economics because you're helping people avoid the banking cartel. Also, Tor. Look at what Tor has done for people in providing encryption to protect them from the CIA and the NSA. So if you look at the market, the underground market in alongside night. That is the Silk Road. That is what gave Ross the inspiration to create the first truly free and uncensored market. That's also why the state gave him double life plus 40.
Anarchism is being spread into mainstream culture in music, comic books, animations, stand-up comedy, film, and video games.
There's this really interesting thing that happened also, like with Hollywood. I noticed, John Hughes, very famous director, did a bunch of famous movies in the 1980s when I was coming of age. What was it, 16 Candles and Breakfast Club, movies like that that were really popular with sort of Gen Xers like me. And those movies, I think, invariably poked fun at principals and teachers in schools as sort of these lame authoritarian figures, right? Who the heroes of the movie would sort of, the whole movie would be about them sort of escaping. Like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? It's a classic example of that, right?
Comic book creator Jack Lloyd discovered that crowdfunding and on-demand publishing was a recipe for successfully delivering entertainment and a principled message to audiences.
When I was finishing up law school, I was kind of just killing some time thinking about what I'd like to do as relates to my passions, which involved, of course, the comic book world and also, promoting liberty. I started to write it and put it together and format it and then think about what I could do for a pitch. And then I worked with an artist to create the initial sketches, and I put that together for a presentation on Indiegogo. And from there, Voluntarist kind of took off.
I'm also working with a lot of multimedia organizations to produce a lot of good libertarian content, and I'm quite interested in producing a video game. This has been a fascinating thing for me lately. Somebody made a meme where they said, Fortnite gets 400,000 people to play it every day or something, and the Libertarian Party gets so few votes, and I was like, it's a great point. Why do we not communicate our philosophy through more modern, enjoyable means? Why can't we sell it through entertainment? Some people would want to do. Not everybody's down for a dry philosophical discussion. Not everybody's down to argue economics like we are, but everybody likes video games, dude.
Libertarian ideas are being brought to a wide audience by artists like Thomas Kay. Kay earned acclaim for his animation, George Ought to Help.
You want to help Oliver out, so you give him some money. To your surprise, George doesn't offer Oliver any help. You try to persuade him, but it's no use. Imagining yourself in this situation, do you think it's okay to threaten to use physical force against George to get him to do the right thing? Now imagine a slightly different situation. This time, a group of your friends take a vote. 6 out of 10 are in favour of threatening George to get him to help Oliver. Does this democratic process make it okay to threaten George?
In 2017, Backwards, a new metal band, released Veracity, filled with anarchist-themed lyrics. The album spent many weeks on Billboard's metal album chart, peaking at number 20.
From the willfully ignorant, the knowledge you won't get none, but don't get it twisted. I too was dumb and then some. Support a politician, sit back and then twiddle his thumbs, not understanding that you got close syndrome. They have no desire to say no.
That was our first album, Veracity. And it was a hit. I would have never imagined that it would have got big as it did. But now we're going to be a lot more. We all come from different backgrounds, and we want to make sure we express that. So we've already pretty much announced that it will be sort of this double-sided type of deal. We had 18 tracks on the first album. So upcoming album is gonna have roughly like 20 and stuff like that. So we're gonna, between our first 2 albums, we're gonna put out more music than people that have 3 albums out, 3-4 albums. But this time we're trying to just get a little more, just mix it up a little bit. And I love it. I love the process, and also obviously with us being able to talk about whatever we talk about because we don't have any strings attached to us, right? It's a lovely thing. There's a lot of closet, definitely in metalcore, even though it seems to be a really leftist-dominated sort of subgenre. There's a lot of closeted libertarians in it because they're like, well, if I come out and say some of that, man, that's basically the end of their career. And this is why I think they're so attracted to to us, and why I talk about it all the time. But